And we are live. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Let's Talk Fishing video podcast. My name is James. I'm going to be your host for tonight's festivities. First thing I'd like to tell you is the Northern Illinois Sports and Outdoor Show is going to take place January 13th through the 16th of 2022. That's going to be at the Lake County Fairgrounds. It's in Grays Lake, Illinois. Go ahead, guys. Stop into this place. That's this Northern Illinois Sports and Outdoor Show. Go to the Grant Rods world-class booth, and they're going to put some of the best rods in the world in your hands. Tell them Jay sent you. Now, tonight, I have a guy who fishes a place that's near and dear to my heart. I've been going through Lake Winnebago all of my life because I have family up there. But I have Chad Burns of Burnsy's Guide Service. How you doing tonight, Chad?
Great, Jay. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm starting to feel a little bit better. Actually got out on the water. That felt so great.
That's a perfect description.
I couldn't cast as well as I used to be able to. You know, and I had one of those razor rods, and I was casting a 7-foot, inshore series. And but just because of that rod, I could cast almost all the way over to the other end of the other side of the canal. But other people were there with their Walmart rods, and they could only cast about halfway. The fish are over on the other side, of course, because as soon as you walk up on them, it's only about 3 feet deep.
Sure.
They can feel you stomping around, and that stomping around feels different than the cars driving by. So
that is a fact.
I keep telling guys, you gotta be careful. You can't go stomping around, man. No, nobody listens to me.
I know that feeling some days, Jay.
Oh yeah, you're a guide. You know that. I always tell people when they tell me, "Oh, why can't we do this?" I'm like, "You really going to guide the guide?"
That is a fact. That is a fact. And I definitely, to kind of touch on what you were saying about Grant rods, or razor rods. I've been a razor rod user for years now. And when they say a rod doesn't make a difference, I respectfully disagree with people. Because they definitely make a difference. The quality, the feel, and there's no doubt using razor rods has put more fish in the boat. Whether it's me using it, my clients using them, my clients absolutely love them.
Geez, they're just so sensitive. How can somebody say that a rod doesn't make a difference? Well, the only way you can say that is if you've just used lower quality, less expensive rods for your entire career, and you're like, well, a rod's a rod,
right?
And if once you start getting further into fishing and I really want to take, and you're telling yourself, I really want to take this to the next level, as soon as you put a good rod, like they go out with a guy like you or me, and if you're going to go fishing with me, I'm going to put good rods in your hands.
Yeah, same when you climb in the boat with me.
I've even gone out with guides and put my rods in their hands.
Sure. Well, it's, Jay, it's the old analogy. I mean, like growing up with my dad, the rod technology back when I fished with my grandpa and my dad just wasn't what it is today. And these rod makers, like razor rods, have just taken things to a whole nother level. And I mean, it's just remarkable. I mean, it really is.
I agree with you. So right now you are actually ice guiding, aren't you?
Yes, I am. In fact, I was actually on the ice today. I was actually on Lake Winnebago today.
When I called you, yes, you were. How does that? Why don't you tell our listeners how that works, Chad?
So as far as the ice fishing, I'm a relatively small operation when it comes to ice fishing. I can only accommodate up to 4 people. We fish out of mobile ice shacks, pop-up insulated ice shacks. I mean, they've got heat, they've got everything. You're going to be comfortable. But one thing about being successful on the Winnebago system is you have to be mobile. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm all about comfort. I fished in those permanent shacks. They're wonderful. Mm-hmm. But not that you can't land on the fish once in a while right away, but most of the time a spot is only a good spot for so long, and you got to keep on moving. You know, and that's the Winnebago system. And it kind of goes the same with the open water season. These fish are always on the move. There's a ton of fishing pressure, way more fishing pressure than there ever used to be, which makes these fish move even faster. Where a spot sometimes used to be good for maybe up to 2 weeks years ago. Now it's 3 days, 4 days.
Okay.
And sometimes if it's a weekend, it might be 3 or 4 hours. And you need to be on the go all the time. But that's what makes it challenging. That's what makes it fun. And I mean, I love ice fishing, love open water fishing. I just love fishing. Love fishing, love the people, love the challenge of catching the fish.
So you pull the sled out in back of you, and you drop it on a spot, and you put your people inside your mobile ice shanty.
Yep. I get them set up in there. So typically how a day starts, I go out, I get the holes drilled, get the ice shack set up, get the heat turned on, go back into shore, pick them up, take them out to a nice, comfortable, heated shack. Their holes it's basically ready to fish. All they got to do is climb in, and then the day just goes from there. Sometimes we move 10 times in a day. Sometimes we move 3 times, and anywhere in between.
So you have Vexilars or something like it?
Yep. I run all Vexilars. Use a variety of different jig sticks. We use tip downs. Tip downs can be very successful out there. One thing that has definitely increased my catch rate through the ice in the last couple of years is starting to utilize plastics more. One of my favorite plastics is actually made by another one of my sponsors, Lure Lipstick. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but this little itty bitty pink split tail has definitely been one of the hot baits. There's no doubt about it. That thing is just constantly, you don't even have to jig your rod and that tail is moving. And that pink color has just been dynamite, on fire. And then I take that in combination with a little bit of this Lure Lipstick waxworm jelly, rub it on to give it a little scent. And like today, I mean, it was definitely the hot ticket. There's no doubt about it. And artificials have definitely become more and more of my ice fishing arsenal over the years, even for panfish.
So what are you catching with that little soft plastic?
Today we were catching perch, but I've caught perch, bluegills, crappies, walleyes, sheephead. I mean, you name it. I mean, those plastics they're more lifelike than the real thing. And on those days when the fish are a little bit grumpier, putting a little bit of that Lure Lipstick waxworm jelly on it sometimes makes all the difference in the world. I mean, the days the fishing's on fire, they'll eat anything you put down there. But the days when those fish are more grumpy, having that plastic that just twitches without even jigging the rod, and then you put that little bit of scent on there as well, and that combination has just been dynamite.
Man, you were catching yellow perch today, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
The bite was decent today. I wouldn't say it was on fire today. The fish were definitely a little bit on the grumpy side. It got better towards dark, like it always does. But our average size was 9 to 12.5 inches.
Wow.
So
a 12-inch perch
Yeah.
Through the ice, that's going to taste good.
Oh, it's going to taste real good. I had some very happy clients when I left the ice today, which is always a good thing.
Man, that meat's going to be nice and firm.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, I've caught them in shallow water in the middle of summer, and it gets a little mushy.
Yeah.
Kind of like crappies, you know. But
yep.
And I have caught some big crappies in Winnebago.
There is a nice crappie population out on Winnebago. I know the other day we had a few crappies mixed right in with the perch. There's a lot of times those panfish will all be swimming right together this time of the year, feeding on the same thing.
One thing I could not believe when I started fishing the North America Bass Circuit, Wisconsin division, is the bass population in Winnebago. I got my dinner fed to me. You know, I came in with a solid limit of 3.5 pounders that I caught just north of that I caught in a small little bay, and we were in that bay all day long. And I bet you we caught 100 largemouth. And I just could not believe it, man. I came in and I was like, you know, down in the bottom 10. And I'm, wow, that is, jeez, I thought for sure. I'm
Sure.
in, with delusions of grandeur, thinking I got to check with this. This is a
Right.
solid limit anywhere. Man, if I was in Florida, it'd be a solid limit on a bad day.
Winnebago is probably one of the most underrated bass fisheries in the Midwest. I mean, as far as, it's not a Green Bay where you have a shot at necessarily a 7-pounder, but the numbers of bass in this system is just incredible. And
Well,
the
I
few
tell you,
guys I see fishing for them every year, it's mind blowing to me.
it took a solid 5-pound average of smallmouth. I could not believe I got beat by smallmouth on the Winnebago system.
Sure.
Winnebago, traditional logic tells me that's a walleye factory. Well, it's more than just a walleye factory.
Yeah, it's a fish factory. I mean, it really is. There's a lot of dynamics going on with the Winnebago system and the Green Bay system as well. But you got obviously rivers coming in all over. You got weeds. You got rocks. You got. I mean, there's
Anything
just
you want to do.
so many different things going on with this system. So many different ways to catch them.
Anything you want to do, man. We beat the docks. We beat we caught fish underneath docks there. Then finally we found the bay that was just full.
Sure.
But also, what do you primarily guide for, Chad?
So I primarily target walleyes, open water
nice.
season. Not that we don't catch some incidentals during the open water season. Ice fishing, we're fishing for perch, walleye, white bass. Occasionally you get some crappies, bluegills. Like I said, a lot of this stuff all swims together in the same area. So a lot of guys want to catch perch and walleyes through the ice. And the white bass are excellent to eat too. And there's definitely no shortage of those.
I fished on the Winnebago system with Tommy Scarlett back in 1998.
Yeah, great guy.
Oh,
awesome
fantastic guy. But I fished with him for 2 days. Then I fished with somebody else. I can't remember who it was. But Tommy had me running all day long because he's like, Jay, there are just so many things I got to do today. Are you sure you want to go? And I'm like, well, yeah. He said, we're going to spend most of the day running. I'm like, show me how you pre-fish. And that's what I'm going to write about. And man, we run it and gun it. We were jigging the king with long rods. We were trolling up in Poigan. We were casting some of the rivers with jigs. It was so much fun. There was so much stuff to do.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, any given guide trip for me, for the most part, I mean, if I don't have probably 25 to 30 rods in my boat, I mean, they are literally everywhere. Thank God for Ranger boats with the amount of rod storage that they have. I mean, the rod storage is incredible. Because you just never know. And even on any given day, your presentation can change as the day goes on. The wind starts blowing, the sun comes out, a storm comes in. I mean, it's just, and that's what makes fishing this system so fun. I mean, yeah, your chance of getting an 8-pound walleye obviously is not that great on the Winnebago system right now. But as far as the tastiness of those fish that are in that 14 to 17 inch range, there is no fish that tastes better than a Winnebago fish.
One of the things I noticed about Winnebago fishing there for the years I fished walleyes there is, you said about your chance of an 8-pounder, but your chance of 33-pounders.
Yes.
Is pretty darn good.
Yes. It's a number. It's definitely a numbers thing out here. I mean, any given day last year, I mean, it was, open water time. I mean, you were catching 30 to 50 walleyes a day. I mean, and whether it was jigging, trolling, casting, shiver minnowing, whatever it was. I mean, we were catching them so many different ways throughout the whole season.
And if you guys, this is Chad's number right down here. Let's see if I can do this.
Yep, you got her.
Thing. Yeah, contact him. If you like ice fishing, go on out with Chad. But also, one thing I'm interested in is open water season. There's just so many different things to do on Winnebago. That's what I would pay for. Just the diversity of the stuff that he can show you in the different ways. You spend a day on the water with a guide like Chad. That's what I used to tell people when I was a guide. You're like, well, what am I going to get if I pay my money for you to take me fishing? I said, well, if you enjoy fishing on your own, you're going to take at least 3 years off your learning curve by going out with me and spending one day on the water with me.
Sure.
Because probably like you, the areas I guided, I had been fishing since I was a boy with my dad, and by the time I started guiding, I already had 15 years of experience on that lake. So
Right.
I knew where the bass were going to be in August, as well as I knew where they're going to be, right after ice out.
Yep. And that's what they pay. That's what people pay guides for. And I mean, and I was one of those guys years ago who was hiring guides to knock that learning curve down. And that's what it's like, especially nowadays with the amount of technology and the constant changing technology that's out there. Just for instance, like electronics, I had probably 15% of my trips last year were just clients that wanted to learn how to use their electronics, because these electronics, they cost a lot of money now. They do a lot of stuff, but they cost a lot of money.
And it
doesn't
not
pay to spend thousands of dollars on a piece of electronics if you don't know how to use it.
And it's not exactly plug and play anymore like it was back in the days of the LMS 350A,
Right. What a great unit that was, though.
Oh, that was my first unit. I remember the first time I took that out on Green Bay, and the guys who I'd fished with on the PWT says you go out about 100 yards and make 3 or 4 waypoints in hopes that they can get you back.
Sure. Yeah, and that's just what it was back then. I mean, it's crazy. The technology is crazy.
I mean, I'm sure you gave that phase 2 a couple times. How am I going to find this boat ramp, particularly on Green Bay, where, miles and miles and miles of shoreline and it all looks the same? And geez, okay, north's that way.
Sure. Oh yeah. And it's amazing to me how many times, you're out the boat with a client that's new to whatever body of water we're on that day. And, I'm used to it because I'm out there so much, but it's amazing. And I can remember back when I first started fishing Green Bay, how easy it was to get turned around out there. Where, like you just said, Jay, all those shorelines look the same. And all of a sudden, back in the day, I mean, it was, when I fished with my grandpa and my dad, I mean, you lined up from that light pole to that hill to that house, and you drew a triangle in between, and that was your spot.
I got pretty good at triangulation. Yeah, I can remember one time up on Big St. Germain Lake, fish, Dad wanted to go out at night. I'm like, how are we going to find our way back? We'll find our way back. And I bet he smoked an entire pack of cigarettes trying to find our lodge. And I was scared. I'm like, are we going to have to just sleep out here? No, we're not sleeping out here.
Right. Thank God for good technology, Jay.
We found it eventually, but whew, well, it's back in the 70s.
Nothing little Nick
you had the green box off of. The green box, Lawrence, it didn't tell you where to go anywhere?
Nope. I got one of those in my display cases. That's just a showpiece now.
Yeah, that thing was cool. It made that noise.
Oh, yeah.
That noise sends shivers up my spine. I see it at sports shows sometimes now. Somebody has, or Lawrence will have one as a curiosity, Look how far we've come.
That is a fact. That is a fact.
The locator.
Right.
So you're going to be at the Milwaukee show, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I'll be at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel Sports Show, which is March 10th through the 13th. I'll be there in the Razor Rods booth.
Razor Rods, okay.
I'll also be guest speaking at the Hog Trough. I'm not sure what my schedule is exactly for that. I should be getting that any day now, as far as when I'll actually be speaking at the Hog Trough and demonstrating the Razor Rods. One of my favorites sitting right next to me here, not to get off the subject of the sports show, but this 6.6, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it on camera, but this 6.6 medium.
You got the Max
series,
okay. Razor Max.
Just a dynamite fish catching machine. Love the rod, love the feel of the rod. And I mean, it's just, my clients love it. It's so light, so well balanced. And that rod by itself has put more fish in the boat for myself and my clients over the last few years than probably any other rods combined. I mean, it's just been incredible.
I love razor rods. I have one right here.
That's a beautiful thing, Jay.
This is their inshore. Jeez.
Yep,
This is their
I'm familiar
inshore
with that
series.
series.
You know, one thing I like to show is look at that. You know, I've had problems with these things. You know, I don't have rod tubes to keep my rods in anymore. And I've never had a razor or a Grant rod fail there at those.
Nope, I have not
Those
either.
eyes are just made well.
Yes, the entire rod. I mean, you can just tell that rod was built with care, and it was built with one intention. Well, two: to last forever and to catch fish.
You know, this last week, I was out doing some fishing for reds and speckled trout on the coast. We were fishing off the shore, and we had to make long casts. And the two guys I had with me had their rods, which, you know, I asked them what brand rod is that? You know, I don't know. Okay, that's fine. You know, fishing isn't their life like it is mine.
Sure.
You know, when we cast out into the middle of the canal, and I said, they're right there. You see where you can see that water moving? You got to get right in the middle of that. So they cast out there, and you know, they're like, I'm getting little bitty bites. I said, well, if you feel a thump in the middle of those little bitty bites, set the hook. Because, you
Good
know,
advice.
that's pinfish. It's pecking at your little minnow.
Sure.
But if you feel a thump, that something had just come up and grabbed your minnow. And they were, and you know, I was watching their rods, and I don't think those guys could even feel those little bites. I just don't. And I was using razor rods. Of course, you know, I had on braid tied direct because, you know, you have to, it's so much a feel thing when you're fishing down there.
No doubt.
And also braid, you can cast it a country mile a lot easier.
Right.
And
Yeah,
if you
braided line combined with that razor rod is just unbelievable.
Yeah, if you want superior sensitivity, I tell people to tie direct with braid.
Yeah.
You know, particularly if you're on the coast and, you know, the water's never really that clear.
Sure.
You know, and that's, I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah.
That's just,
I don't think there's much else to say about it. I think that, you know, the feel, the line obviously makes a huge difference. Same thing when we're walleye fishing. I mean,
oh yeah,
it's
when I was jigging for saugers on the Illinois River. You know, I used to live right there in Peru, Illinois. I lived there for 7 years, and I used to take braid down the fluorocarbon. And by the time I moved away, when I had so many years on that river, it was just braid down the jigs.
sure.
You know, the water's never clear there. Man, gee, can't say enough about that. Back then, I didn't use razor rods back then, or razor. I didn't use Grant either, but the stuff I had was a good rod.
Sure. Yeah, not that those rods were not superior back in the day, but the rod technology in the last 10 years has come so far. I mean, it's unbelievable how and in combination with the line.
Yes.
You know, the line technology has definitely made that a difference as well.
I couldn't believe this, but when I got my first Grant rods, I got my first Grant rods CUDA EXT last year. It was a brand new series, the EXTs. And I went out and I was wacky rigging, and I cast it out, and I had a little bit of slack in the line. So I'm reeling as fast as I can to get that slack out. And I felt tap, tap, tap. When there was slack in the line, I'm like, no, yes. And I set the hook because, yeah, I felt it when it got tight.
Sure.
How did I feel that? That gave me goosebumps. That's not possible is what I told myself. But, you know, I felt it. That's crazy, man. It's just absolutely crazy.
And it's possible. It's amazing what you can feel on these rods. It really is.
So what is your favorite? Why don't we talk a couple go-to techniques for fishing walleye open water on Winnebago?
So on Winnebago, my favorite technique is definitely casting shiver minnows / jig and rapalas / hyper hammers / hyper rattles. That whole heavier lead, looking for a reaction bite. That's definitely turned into my go-to thing over the last few years. I just love doing it. I have so many clients that are still learning it. what kind of goes hand in hand with that is learning how to read your electronics so you can spot fish on your
That's what I was going to
electronics.
ask you. What do you have to see? What do you look for before you start pulling those rods out of the rod locker?
Well, typically what I'm looking for, a lot of times we're casting rocks or weed edges.
Okay.
And my general rule of thumb is I like to cast to a pod of at least 3 or 4 fish. I don't cast the onesie twosies unless it looks like a giant. And
Wow.
I'll put a waypoint on those fish. I'll position the boat upwind and then have my clients cast off the back to that pot of fish. We'll switch baits a couple times if we don't catch one right away. And typically after about 10 minutes, we just move on to the next pot of fish. It's a very aggressive way to fish, but it's a fun way to fish. You're actually hunting the fish instead of waiting for the fish to come find you.
I was about to say that, man. That is just so different than that mindset's completely different than when I was fishing walleyes.
Yeah. Yep. It's definitely been an eye opener for a lot of people. Fishing these baits super aggressively, really ripping them a lot of these days to get that, when these fish have lockjaw or are not super active, even on calmer days, sometimes, giving those baits a huge rip gets it just kind of ticks them off enough to where it gets a reaction bite out of them and you end up catching fish. It's crazy.
Man, when I would guide walleyes, if I was having a tough day, I would take off the floats, I would take off the sinkers, and just put a leech on and make sure it's a, like Tommy Scarlett says, if you have a leech that's being a jerk and, wrapping around your line, he said, I'll use that leech until it dies.
Sure.
Because that's the kind that's going to go down there and grab a walleye by its neck. And, I would just put that on and just let it go down, And you're saying, no, I'm looking for a reaction, but that is so cool. I'd much rather look for reaction bites and just put a leech on and watch a loose line,
Right. And that goes, back to my second favorite way to fish, which is slip bobbering, which is the total opposite of shiver minnowing, because there are times of the year when the shiver minnows do not work. And to go hand in hand with what you're saying, Jay, there is nothing better you can put in front of a grumpy, non-aggressive walleye than a big, juicy leech or a night crawler. But definitely when you're slip bobbering, the leech definitely seems to outperform. Those are definitely my top two: slip bobbering and shiver minnowing.
Well, we were talking about Green Bay. I was actually up there with a walleye pro who lived up there in Little Suamico. And all of a sudden we went over a deep weed line, and I could see holes in the deep weed line. And I said, man, let me try something. I put on a night crawler with no weight and just threw it out to one of those holes. And sure enough, it didn't go tap, tap, tap. It started going slowly off to the left. I'm like, oh God, I'm going to show this guy how old school people catch walleyes. It was about a 6-pounder, man. That was so exciting.
Sure. There's nothing that fights like shallow water walleyes.
Sure.
Whether you're fishing the rocks, fishing the weeds, you set the hook when you're fishing in skinny water, whether it's Green Bay or Winnebago, those fish fight extra hard. That's for sure.
Or a 4-pound river sauger out of the Illinois.
Yes. Yeah, those saugers out of the Illinois River, they're crazy. Those things are on steroids.
They're mean. Yeah.
They are mean.
Then I've actually brought those things in, and it flares out its gills and it closes its mouth, and you gotta get your pliers and pry their mouths open. And I have seen that this guy wasn't even hooked.
Sure.
It just wasn't going to let that minnow and jig go.
Almost need to get the jaw spreaders like when you're fishing for pike.
But muskies, yeah, that's man, yeah, that's just mean, just like the people in Illinois. Jeez. And I can say that I was born and raised there.
Yes, you can. Yes,
but also
you can.
Both sides of my family are from Wisconsin. Now I live down south.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with getting out of the winter.
I tried to get it back to Wisconsin, man. That's my favorite place. When I get up there and see the deer hunting areas in West and on the west, particularly the southwest of Chicago, of Wisconsin, or the areas all around Winnebago or up in Door County. Wow.
Well, today was a heat wave. We had 22 degrees here today. So it was actually a very nice day out on the ice today. I mean, we were in the shacks, so the shacks were 70 degrees or 80 degrees. Yeah. But I'm definitely, to get back on something you were talking about earlier as far as the sports shows, I'm super pumped for all the sports shows this year. I'm glad they're all back on this year. Yes. I'm excited, even though I'm not going to be at the Illinois Sports Show. I'm super happy that that's happening. I know the Michigan Sports Show is happening. The Madison Boat Show is happening, which I'll be at. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel Sports Show is happening this year. Crossing my fingers anyway. Hopefully nothing goes haywire and cancels these shows.
Yeah. I'm not a superstitious person, but, I agree with you. I hope that cooler heads prevail.
Yes, agreed. Completely agreed.
Cooler heads prevail. So,
yeah, and a lot of these small companies, they really rely on these sports shows.
They do.
I mean, razor rods, lure, lipstick. I mean, I can go right down the list. I mean, it is so important for some of these smaller companies to get that sports show exposure, because they're not necessarily hanging on a shelf in some of the bigger department stores. I mean, Shields is one of my sponsors. I love Shields. You can see them going across my jersey.
Yeah.
They're a super company, but they only have so much shelf space as well. They can't put everything in there.
And, you've got to be in the smaller places before you're going to get into the Bass Pros and the Shields.
Yep, that's a fact.
Cabela's,
Yep.
And now since Bass Pro and Cabela's are the same company, it just got harder.
Agreed. I completely agree with you.
You've probably never said something that's truer than what you just said. And I'm certainly not cutting on you. I mean, that's absolute truth.
Yeah.
We need sports shows. We need them. And besides, you know what? They're a lot of fun. And there were always something, when I lived up north, it was always something to do after deer hunting season is over. Now it's sports show season. Now I'm gonna get ready and put on my good shirt and go to sports shows. I was a guide up there. I was an outdoor writer up there. So I go there and talk at some of the sports shows around Chicago and see people I don't see anywhere else other than sports shows. And man, I saw you on Midwest Outdoors. You know what? Thank you.
Sure.
That makes it all worthwhile. That I have people who.
And there's just nothing funner than sitting at a show and talking about fishing with your fellow fishing gurus that are out there, and all the people that come there to, whether it's to buy stuff, to look at stuff, to do the research, whatever it is.
To book a guide.
There's nothing I enjoy more than talking about fishing every day.
Well, that's why I called my show Let's Talk Fishing.
I love the name of the show.
Because that's the only thing I'm better at than fishing is actually talking about fishing.
Hey, that's okay. You got to be good at relaying the message as well as catching them.
Yes. Well, hey, Chad, do you have any shout outs you'd like to make? Any thank yous to companies, to people, to organizations?
Yeah, I'd want to thank, obviously, you, Jay, for having me on the show. This is the second time I've been on here. Thank you so much for your time and the phone call and having me on. Big shout out, obviously, to Razor Rods. Bryant and Todd are just great people, been so supportive of everything that I do. Shields, obviously. I'll actually be doing a hummingbird seminar at the Appleton Shields with Johnny Candle the first part of February. I'm super excited about that. It's going to be very one-on-one with people. So I'm excited about that. And then I've got a ton of local sponsors as well. Culver's is another one of my big national sponsors. Culver's custard, baby. Custard and butter burgers.
Yeah, butter burgers are better burgers. Butter burgers are better burgers, yeah.
I totally agree with you.
I like their fries.
And then, of course, Ranger boats. I've been running a Ranger for I'm 46. I know I don't look 46. 26 years. Yeah, 26 years I've been running a Ranger. Just hands down, I can't say enough good things about all the people down in Flippin, Arkansas, and the whole gang down at Quams who set me up with my boat every couple of years and take care of all the people I send there, whether it's for a boat or a snowmobile or whatever it is. Yeah, you can't do this without your sponsors, and you can't do it without people like you, Jay. I can't say enough good things about you and my sponsors both. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank you for coming on the Let's Talk Fishing video podcast because, without people like you, I can't do this. I'm just not that interesting. So,
come on, Jay. You're pretty interesting. I've talked to you enough. You're a pretty interesting guy.
Oh, thank you. But it's the show's about my guests. That's what I should actually say. Enough of the self-deprecating humor,
Sure.
But yeah, this show is about my guest. And anyways, guys, in closing, I'd like to tell you again that the Northern Illinois Sports and Outdoor Show is going to take place January 13th through 16th of 2022. That's 4 days of sports shows. And it's going to be at the Lake County Fairgrounds in Grays Lake, Illinois. That's in the what I call the upper right. That's in the northeast corner of Illinois. Up there, not very far away from the Fox chain if you need a geographical reference there. And thank you again, Chad, for coming on the show. And with that, everybody, good night.
Yep. Thank you, Jay. Happy New Year. Everybody have a great night. Be safe out on the ice. Make sure you use your safety gear. Ice picks, people. They're $10. They might save your life. Get some ice picks. And we'll see everybody at the show this year. Happy New Year.